Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Turbonomic's #1 podcast, the Greg and Joe Turbo Show. Today I'm joined, as always, by the man who is afraid of no ghosts. We know this for a fact, Mr. Greg Minicello. Hey, Greg.
Hey, how are you?
Doing well, doing well. And today we are super lucky. This has been a long time in the making. Today we're very lucky to have Turbonomic's very own resident chicken farmer, Mrs. Eva Tuczai. Eva, hello. Welcome. Oh, where does come
Wrangler,
from?
please.
Chicken Wrangler. Hey, listen.
Wrangler. I thought you were going to say Rick. I thought Rick was next.
I thought Rick was going to speak up for himself, but he didn't. We also are joined by Rick the Skeleton. Hey, Rick. Okay. Anyways, not much of a talker. That's fine. Maybe he'll have something more to add later. But before we get into today's episode and what we're going to talk about, maybe I could just kick it over to you, Eva. And for those who don't know who you are, which I don't believe there's many people who wouldn't, maybe you can introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, when I ain't wrangling chickens, I'm wrangling product enhancements. So I am the product manager at Turbonomic, who is responsible for use cases around optimization of containerized applications and the platforms that they run on. So we kind of collectively call that cloud native. And, just kind of one of those slices of the technology stacks that we optimize as a whole, right? Yep. But I've been wrestling with Turbo for 10 years. So 10 years now, 10 years. I started at Turbo back in 2013, and they still have me working here. So that's a good thing for me.
Lucky us.
That's a plus. That is a plus. Well, again, we're very excited to have you. And in honor of Halloween, which this episode, if you're watching it, should be out on Halloween, so that's great. The timing is perfect. Otherwise, why are we wearing these things? It looks
right.
Ridiculous.
It's Halloween. Why would we be wearing this hat?
Right, exactly. I thought it was a good opportunity to maybe discuss what is potentially the scariest topic in all of IT. The one thing that strikes fear in the heart of everyone as soon as they hear it, and that is the concept of containers, Kubernetes, and microservices. Ooh. Right. It's terrifying. It's terrifying. But, again, it's a technology that's been around for some time, and still it seems like when you say it, people kind of quiver, right? It elicits a reaction.
Sure.
So we thought, hey, if we can get Eva on to help us kind of unpack that a little bit and maybe understand why is it so scary, and does it warrant it, right? Should it be so scary? So again, we're happy to have you, Eva, and looking forward to demystifying it. But I guess before we jump in, Rick, anything from you?
I guess he's got a bare bones outlook on Kubernetes.
Well said, Rick.
Well said. Thank you, Rick. Thank you. So Eva, I mean, maybe we can just start with, just a basic understanding of kind of how this concept of Kubernetes kind of came about in the first place.
And like we said, something that's been around for close to 10 years, right? 2014. Why is it still so daunting? Well, I think that, back in the olden days, kiddies, when you look at building applications, I think what people realized is that monolithic architectures, and anybody remember SOA, service-oriented architectures, people realized that you need to start to kind of decouple things. And then I think that really that kind of started to precipitate out, if I'm going to decouple things, I really need faster, easier ways to develop, build, and run basically microservice applications. Now, I kind of leaped forward there a little bit.
Yeah.
So containerization, containers, maybe let's just start with good old-fashioned little old containers. They actually became a way that I could now package, build stuff instead of putting it all into a big VM, right? Or maybe even if a little VM, if you're kidding yourself, but containers became a thing. I don't think we have to go through the history of Docker and everything like that, even though that may be something we could do. But at this point, I think everybody is like, no, containers, or the concept of even further decoupling things, but also in the runtime, right? In the runtime, why do I have to bring the heavy lift of everything in an operating system, right?
Yeah.
All those NVIDIA drivers, all this, all that. Isn't there elements of the operating system that I should be able to share, right? Can't I abstract that out and then really have a container focused on those bits and bytes that I need to run a process? Because that makes it lighter weight, easier,
Yep.
right? So now you said, okay, I'm going to go from cows to chickens, right? Make it lightweight. But now I got to wrangle me some chickens. And I think that's where I don't think containerization in of itself is the story here. It's the orchestration of containers, because people, you youngins may not remember, but even in the early days of containers, people were scripting everything.
Yeah.
Think about it. I mean, today we don't even that's so ancient history. That is so 2010. Scripting like running this container, start, stop. Think about it. Starting, stopping containers, scripting it out, right?
Yeah.
But I think, Greg, you kind of have something that you kind of put together this little timeline. So let's go from there. I'm all bought in to these principles.
Mhm.
Now what do I do? Right? Enter what, Greg? What enters onto the scene?
In 2014,
Yeah.
Google open sourcing the Borg project, which I believe was codenamed 7 of 9, Project 7 of 9.
Yeah, something like that's right. That's right.
Google loves code names. It's
Yes.
true.
That's
True.
right. And
Yeah.
so Google was already doing okay, containerization, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Containerization at scale, that's the hard thing, right? And they actually built out an orchestrator. By the way, there was other little things starting to percolate and float around, but Google said, okay, let's try to get the industry rallied around one thing instead of what eventually became, I don't want to get ahead of the story, but what eventually became, it's a container. There's many ways that you could wrangle these chickens, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
But Eva, if this Borg thing is something that Google came up with, right? How is that any different than you or me in our basement scripting container orchestration is just they thought, hey, we got to do something about this, so they started scripting it. They started pulling together how they're going to orchestrate these things. What's the difference between them doing it and everybody else doing it? How did they become the de facto or the standard or the thing that emerged, and not someone else or some other method of doing this?
I think what they had behind them was a philosophy of they really believed in open sourcing it. They in theory could have built a software product
Yep.
and had it I don't know, what's the opposite of open sourcing? Something that people
Closed sourcing?
Yeah. Yeah, he's not
wrong. And I think what Google said was, no, VMware did that. Right? All right, maybe I'm picking on them. I am. Why don't we open source it? If you look at Linux at the time was probably the largest, most successful open source community out there, right?
Yeah. Yep.
By the way, little turbo trivia. I mean, containerization really started on Linux, right? I don't think this is maybe a correlation. I don't know. We'd have to ask Kelsey Hightower, but
maybe we'll get him on the show.
Do we have a good number? Rick, do you have a number for Kelsey?
I don't know. That may be disconnected.
He'll get back to us, I think.
He'll get back to us. Yeah. So I think what Google wanted to do is they wanted to see an open source community evolve and people together build this out, that it should not belong to one company. And if it's really about fostering cloud native principles and agility and elasticity and blah, 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 all right, the manifesto of cloud native,
Yeah.
that came out, right? That the 12 aspects or whatever of cloud native. I think they wanted to prove that you could do this and keep the fundamental software that would keep this all running open source.
Yes.
Now, of course, today, fast forward, are there people making money on this? Yes, but I think making money in the concept of support and maintenance and, you know, the other little things. It's not about that you have to pay for Kubernetes, right? So I think if I look back then and look now, I think it was about proving that you could do this, you could rally people, you could keep it free, and
Right.
it can grow and evolve.
Right. And the promise there too was, right, this is just a better way, like you said, to speed up development, to speed up deployment, to provide folks with a way to not have to bring the entire house with them, right?
Right.
But again, I mean, that all sounds good, and it sounds easy, and I guess you kind of maybe have already alluded to it, that it sounds like maybe the scarier part isn't necessarily containers themselves, but really more of the how do we manage them once we've built them? Is that kind of what you're getting at? Like this, it's really the orchestration piece that people struggle with, or that they're afraid of, or
Yeah,
what do you
yeah,
think about that?
yeah. I think that's what it is. I think there's also the reality of it being open sourced, is that there's a lot of ways to do similar things, right? Um, Again, I'm kind of leapfrogging the timeline here, or the little, bedtime story. But I think if we look today at the cloud native, the CNCF, which was really birthed out of all of this, right? The CNCF actually didn't exist prior to Borg being outsourced, right? Um, the momentum around Kubernetes, I think, and kind of the Linux Foundation then birthed CNCF, and then CNCF became the shepherd of all things related to cloud native concepts. I mean, you
Yep.
could even find Cloud Foundry and Mesos and Nomad are all there in CNCF. So while it's not all Kubernetes, it is, I think, promoting those principles of open source community. But when you also look at the CNCF landscape,
Hmm.
if I as a user want to run Kubernetes and I want to leverage, I'm making this up now, different types of ingress, or I want to leverage ingress, I want to leverage storage. Holy kittens. You got these tiles. Rick, can you pull that up?
Yeah, he's working on it.
He's
Oh,
got.
okay.
Does Rick have a right arm? I'm just curious. Or maybe it's just the background there. It's tough to say. He's had
Well,
a rough week.
How you feeling, Rick? You okay?
maybe he just spun up a Kubernetes cluster and he's excited. Um, I
Rick just sent me a DM. He sent me what we're looking to share here. Let me pull it up.
I mean,
Is this what you're interested in?
yeah. I mean, come on, people.
Hey,
What can
thanks, Rick.
I tell you? I mean,
This is
first of
exactly
all,
what you wanted.
yeah, first of all, I think what's great is that look at the innovation, right? Look at the innovation. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But now, my favorite thing to say is, Kubernetes is great, but there's like 15 ways to do one thing. So which one should I do? Well, this landscape, tells me what all the options are, but boy, I really have to bring a lot of knowledge and experience. And the catch 22 is, how do you get the experience? And, it's, boy, it's great, and some of the tiles are bigger because they've graduated. Now, I think this was also the intent of this community, is that um kind of what will the cream that will percolate up to the top is the things that are the better ideas, because more people will gravitate towards them. It's crowdsourcing. I don't know. It's popularity contest in some way, but that good ideas will get more support. And that's basically what you see with the size of these tiles, right? Everybody started out, by the way, CNCF also put some discipline around, this process of birthing an idea and nurturing it and going through the stages until it's graduated, right? It's like the life cycle of our little children, right?
Yes.
And that's the way, it kind of should be. Good ideas will naturally, good people and people will gravitate towards the good ideas and help make it possible. But boy, there's a lot of stuff there.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, I totally agree, and I think, like you kind of alluded to as well, like CNCF has this concept of graduated projects that kind of help you to validate, like this thing has kind of gone through the process in the community to kind of be elevated to that level. But but again, it's like if I was a novice, which I am, but let's just assume for the story that I'm still a novice, and I'm looking to get started with microservices and with containers. I look at this and I'm way overwhelmed.
It's a little intimidating.
This here is the fear, right? I guess this is the thing. And like, how do I know? Because to your point, it is catch-22. You don't know what you don't know, and you don't know it until you've done it. But to get started, you need to know. And it's this whole like,
It sounds like a lot of gymnastics, Joe.
listen, it is, and I'm not flexible. Let me tell you, it is. Yeah. So,
But also you can't have a field of dreams. You don't want to have like, oh, I'm going to go out and build a cluster and then crickets chirp, right? Because really,
Yeah.
we're all doing this. We should be doing this because there's a business need that can be solved with an application that has to be built and it has to run somewhere, right? And then when it runs somewhere, we want those cloud native principles of elasticity, scalability, portability. I would put portability as a cloud native concept. I think portability is important, right? They're in today's day and age, thanks to the CNCF and Kubernetes, we've demonstrated that you don't need to get completely locked in. But what we kind of need is more opinions, I think. And these opinions have come out. Let's take, all right, full disclosure, everyone knows that we work for IBM, and IBM bought this little company called Red Hat. So let's talk about Red Hat. I mean,
I've heard of them.
Because right around this time when the CNCF was formed was when Red Hat and IBM really started contributing to the same open source project, right?
well, because Google was sure. And it's like, oh,
Yeah.
this is great. We should all do this. Why? Because there is a benefit of working together. In fact, I think just as a little deviation, next month, actually in a few weeks, maybe less, is the KubeCon in North America, right over here in Chicago, where I am, Chicago. And one of the things that I see that is very, very, very much talked about at KubeCons is being part of CNCF, be an ambassador. Everybody can pitch in. It's not, you don't just have to be a brilliant developer like Rick, you can be somebody that contributes to writing documentation. And
To be fair, he does work himself to the bone. Sorry, I had to. Sorry. Sorry.
he is looking a little peaked, isn't he?
You're dead on there, Joe.
You let me know when you're finished, all right? You sure?
Yeah.
You sure?
No.
No. All right. So
That's what makes it so fun.
It is. So that's that.
Yeah, we're back to IBM and Red Hat. They're jumping into the show.
Well, and then they also decide to kind of curate. That's my word of the month, by the way. Curate a platform. So I think what starts to happen is really when you look at Kubernetes, it is really containers as a service. It is orchestration. And what really applications needs are things that build out a platform. And I think what Red Hat was maybe the first one to do is to say, I need to kind of curate a platform that brings an opinion about RBAC, an opinion about ingress, and an opinion about eventually kind of looking at what it was in 3.1 after it was cartridges and gears. That was the thing. That was the thing. And then it became pods and Kubernetes APIs, to now where the OpenShift platform is, pieces of a GitOps strategy. It's pipelines. It's even a fuller RBAC model thought out. It's curated storage. It's even though storage has relationships to the underlying infrastructure, right? But it's really this package that says, here, this is not only can you run containers, but this is how you run applications.
Right. So it sort of takes a little bit of that fear, a little bit of the unknown, a little bit of that, oh my goodness, this landscape like this, what are the pieces that I need? If you just bring in the one platform,
yeah,
providing those opinions about what Red Hat or some other company for that matter,
Rancher,
came to the industry with and said,
Rancher,
we believe this is the right way to do it. You can jump on, tag yourself into that, and you haven't got to go do the homework yourself.
Well, and it also introduces a GUI, right? Which helps to sort of understand and manage when you don't have to be on the command line all the time. Because I also think too, like in a lot of ways, just the thought of a command line freaks a lot of people out.
Sure.
Even though the GUI is essentially doing the same thing, it's a mental thing where it just feels easier, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe it even feels more mature. I don't know. But you're right. It could be easier to onboard people to do certain tasks.
Yeah. I just think conceptually it helps, at least me, and like a visual person.
Yeah.
So like it just helps me to understand how things also work together as opposed to
right.
Doing a get whatever object and then, trying to understand its relationship to everything else.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
That's a good point. I mean, honestly, even with the console and the Rancher portal, I still feel more comfortable in a CLI. Isn't that terrible? Because that's how old I am, Sonny.
Back in my day.
Back in my day. Yeah. Yeah. Chickens didn't even have feathers. Yeah. But I also think then that what kind of is evolved out of platforms, opinionated platforms. By the way, I don't think that's a bad word. That used to be a bad word. That used to be a way to say, oh, you want to do Kubernetes and not Cloud Foundry because Cloud Foundry is really opinionated. That's a little different level of opinions. That was more about Cloud Foundry said, thou shalt be microservices, thou shalt be stateless. And all these, older architectures that had, stuffed everything into one pod just said, oh, that's not stateless. I don't think I can, and Kubernetes said, don't worry, any services, any containers welcome here. You're all equal in my eye. And then
it's mighty accommodating.
Pardon?
I said that's mighty accommodating.
Well, so maybe that's a little paradigm of Kubernetes and the definition of, I'm just going to orchestrate your containers for you. I'm not going to, I have definitions of what is stateless deployment. I have definitions of what is stateful, right? I have storage. I have these definitions. So come all containers, come one. But then there's patterns. So I think opinions lead to patterns because I have to wrangle a lot of stuff.
Yep.
And even if I've got opinions on what my platform should provide me, I need patterns to adopt them. And then, oh boy, if you weren't scared already, I think I look at some of these patterns and, I read occasionally and I look at some of these things that nice people are putting out there and I go, really? We're still like discussing requests as a pattern? I mean, it's just like but you have to. Why? Because at the end of the day, the scheduler prioritizes requests. And now you got all these opinions on patterns. And that's even more confusing. Like, should I set requests equal to limits? Oh, well, what this guy says, oh, yeah, you should. Because, you don't want to go around guessing if you've got resources. And then I would say, why would you allocate 100% if you don't know that you
Right.
even need it?
Right.
What are you? What are you, a neophyte? Right. I mean, so this is, I think, where we're at. Kubernetes has crossed that chasm. It has made it known that it is for production. It is for scale. What is it? I think I'm going to call out Ticketmaster. I think they did at a KubeCon. I don't know what these guys were talking about was thousands of nodes. This is where the upper theoretical limit of one control plane, and I don't even know what it is, kids. I don't even know, 10,000 or 100,000. I mean, some outrageous number, right?
Yeah.
And the elasticity pods popping up, popping down. I mean, just enormous scale that's already been achieved. But now what I think is it's time for Kubernetes to go through the next phase of evolution. All right, you proved yourself, right? But you're still not really helping people manage trade-offs in patterns. They kind of have to live with the fact that if I want to not go crazy about wrestling a bunch of different clusters, I have to have a pattern of sharing, right? Oh my God, I don't get my own cluster. Are you kidding me? I'm an important developer.
Yes.
And I have a credit card. I can go spin one up in the cloud. No, because you're going to spin one up in the cloud and it's going to be 10 times bigger than you want, which it is, right? So let's share. All of you come in and share. But no, I still need my node. All right. So now these patterns start to emerge, right? And then at the end of the day, no one gets fired for over provisioning, but they do get fired if the application crashes.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good point, but that story and that statement sounds eerily familiar, and it sounds familiar from the standpoint of technology that we've all been leveraging before this idea of microservices, right? When we were all in our on-prem data centers, and it's interesting that a lot of the same concerns, while maybe the language is different, right? The underlying like issue with people remains the same. That we have all of this technology and it can do a lot of fantastic things, but it does require that the operator, the person doing it, is taking advantage of those features and of that technology. And if they bring with them this idea of how they're going to do it, and it's just a mirror image of how they've always done it, then it doesn't really matter what technology you're using. The outcome is going to be the same, right?
Right. Yeah.
Right.
And so, yeah,
My application has gone from a monolithic application to the exact same application, but now it's a container.
Well, I love that lift and shift story, right? But even for ones that actually took the time, to double click on what you were saying, not only are you right, but we also turned application developers into operators in Kubernetes. We told them that you need to specify stuff up front. Like what kind of stuff? I thought I was just building code. No, my friend. To deploy this code, you must specify resource constraints. You must specify placement constraints. Why? I thought Kubernetes handled that for the, oh no, we can't have free range chickens running around the farm. Why? Rick, why? Why can't we have free range chickens, Rick?
Rick's a vegetarian. He told me earlier. That's probably sorry. It's yeah.
Oh, then I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm being indelicate.
Doesn't look like Rick's eating very well anyway.
It's what, double G? What's everybody worried about with free range chickens?
That their node's gonna fall over.
Yeah, because of the Tyrannosaurus Rex
Yes.
chicken. Everybody's
Giant
worried
chicken.
about, because Kubernetes doesn't judge every container can run here. Everybody's worried about, yeah, well, so can that, container.
Yeah, don't put me on a node with that guy.
That guy's just a big fat VM in disguise. Don't let that little chicken beak disguise fool you.
Right.
That thing's a hippopotamus posing with feathers.
Actually, very big in real life.
I do wish we had a screenshot that I could throw up here right now. Maybe I'll do this in the edit with a T-Rex with a chicken mask on. Maybe I'll try to figure it out. I'll try to figure it out.
Well, you want a T-Rex?
Oh, we're doing it live.
We're doing it live.
I gotta find my T-Rex. All right, we'll come back to that. So
Yeah, hey Rick, you want to take that? Go ahead and
Yeah, Rick, make a note of that, Rick. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. You're a keeper.
he's so accommodating.
Yeah, he's great.
He really is. So I think what's interesting for all the cool things about, cloud native principles and wanting to have all this wonderful, goodness is that at the end of the day, like you said, it's still the laws of physics of supply and demand, and workload will run. And now if you want chickens to share the same plot of land in the farm, everybody is worried about how do we, 'cause developers, are going to, if developers are, there you go. There you go. The promise of elasticity.
That is perfect.
But the reality is, and sometimes these opinionated platforms actually push you to do this. So we've turned developers into operators. This is the fear. This is the daunting, like, oh my God, I'm afraid of this T-Rex chicken. Now I got to put cages around everything. I'm just showing a two-dimensional slide.
Yeah.
The reality is, all right, let's count them, Rick. What kind of bars do we have on that cage? We have limits. We have requests. By the way, do limits count because the scheduler doesn't? Oh, but we have QoS. Oh, and then we have pod-to-pod affinity, pod-to-pod anti-infinity. You want to put a pod on a node? You got your node label selector strategies. What do you got there? Well, you got node name. Who would do that? You got node labels. You got your taints. You got your tolerations. You've got
Quotas. Good.
Oh yeah.
Uh-oh.
I
Sorry. I didn't mean to bum you out there. I just had to throw that one in
I
there.
hate quotas. And then, if you got a quota and your developer didn't put all their little chicken cage bars in, I got a limit range. I'm going to inject you with a cage if you don't got one.
Yeah.
Well, are all chickens exactly the same? Heck no. My God, this was the promise of Kubernetes, is that I can really build cloud native applications. And what we have evolved to in 10 years is not the chicken farmers that have to cage the chickens. And these are complex cages. These are really complex cages. And you ain't gonna find a definition of using these cages in no dashboard or console. That's what makes Kubernetes scary. And even teaching someone that vocabulary of just some things I popped out, under my hat. I mean, go look at the Kubernetes specification. Holy kittens, there's so many things that you can do, but they're all about predicating everything all up front. So you got to know where you want to end up, and then how you got to define your manifest to get there. And that's, we're just talking about one pod, right? Now I've got 300 applications running in a shared environment. What am I going to do? Like, okay, well, you get your node, and you get your node, and you get a node, and you get a node, and everybody gets a node. And
I'll work a car.
Win for you.
If we're giving stuff out, I'll take a car. I'm just throwing that out there. Thanks. But it's interesting though, because it almost sounds like what we're saying is that in a lot of ways, technology is almost outpacing sort of the skills that a lot of people possess. I mean, it sounds like we've
Yeah.
exposed lots of knobs and levers, but as the technology expands, so does that skills gap, and then it becomes harder and harder to play catch up for the majority. Now, that's not to say folks like you and plenty of other people are very well versed in Kubernetes and orchestration and have a good handle on it, but it seems like that gap is getting larger, and I guess I wonder how we sort of cross
Yeah.
that. Because I think, again, to go back to the beginning of Kubernetes, and we've all heard this for years, that everyone's going to be running Kubernetes 100%, like this is the future. And now we're here in the future, and it's still, lots of people use it to some degree, and a lot of people have large environments, but overall, it's still not like necessarily like the largest environments that we're seeing, right? There's still plenty of on-prem, plenty of straight compute in the cloud. And
We should do a podcast on that because I would just say I don't know if it ever wanted to rule the world and be the one ring to rule them and one ring to bind them. Because look, I mean, I got some gray hair. There's still a lot of data sitting on mainframes, and now that we're part of IBM, we love mainframes, but it's still, I think it's about what does this application need to do? How much elasticity do you need to have? What are you working with? And I think this is the role of architects, right? You want to design or leverage a technology stack or platform that suits the purpose of what you want to drive, whether it's the way the application runs, the methodologies that you have with being agile. I think there's a lot of things that go into that, right? Because I would say there's plenty of applications that are on the mainframe. They should stay there because they work really well there. Now, but for skill sets, it is interesting that again, what you do need to know these moving parts, and you come to the tables, two people. There's this DevOps engineer, maybe three. The SRE, they're kind of, I would say, a little bit more infrastructure focused. You got this DevOps individual. DevOps has been many things now, but let's just say somebody who knows the platform. And then there's the application people who leverage the platform. I think whether it was Java on a VM, I mean, I think you always had these needs for these skill sets. But I think what's interesting is that people maybe think Kubernetes does more than it really does, right? Maybe that's, and when you realize that it doesn't self-optimize, that you as the user have to kind of predict the future a little bit, I think that's where it just really gets complicated, because you do have a lot of options, a lot of patterns, and then you start to figure out what's your tolerance, right? Is your tolerance more for being just way over provisioned? It's also interesting. Let me take a little digression, that if I want to take a look at the state of stuff now, one of the things that I've seen emerging is a lot of tools to help you wrangle this beast, right? And again, some of the tools handle, different aspects of this ecosystem. But back just maybe 4 years ago, there used to be a tile for just called observability. Now there are not a tile, I'm sorry, a card. And inside of that card, there was a tile for Prometheus and a tile for, I don't know, logging, maybe logs. And then it started to kind of expand. Today, if you look at that cloud native landscape, you're going to see observability : visibility. Now, I'm sure your readers are going to be like, "Oh, she's wrong. It's actually no." But generally speaking, visibility. But also, there is now a tile or card called. Come on, Rick. Optimization. All right. I will look this one up because people should take me to task.
Be a whole lot easier if Rick would just contribute to the conversation.
That's all right. I mean, he seems like a nice guy. So what we have is categories of, where is it? Yeah. Okay, let me show. Let me show, since Rick's a little slow on the uptake here. We've been lobbing him, I've been tossing him a bone. And
Hey,
all right.
No,
Now,
what a dry sense of humor.
I'll add the sound effect in post production. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Hit him with the that.
observability and analysis,
Okay.
monitoring, logging, tracing, chaos engineering.
I don't know what that is, but that sounds awesome.
Intentionally breaking stuff to make sure that it is self-healing.
Right.
Okay.
No, right. Intentionally break it. But continuous optimization.
What's that all about, Eva?
It's about people who are copying me. Okay, so it is fast. Look, I'm glad to see it. We were saying this 6 years ago, that Kubernetes is self-healing. It's not self-optimizing. And to see these things come out, I think, is evident of that truth. Now, I think it would be an interesting debate with maybe maintainers of the different aspects of the Kubernetes community to kind of make an argument of, shouldn't Kubernetes do some of these things? But in the spirit of open source, there are some things that offer some cool ideas. Now, in general, I would say I'm not competitive bashing, but I think in general, I think sometimes I'm seeing like AI everywhere, and I don't know, I'm kind of getting tired of AI, and just, I don't know, if you do 2-metric correlation, is that AI? I don't know. Is it?
Yeah.
Is it important to do correlation? Yes. Is it artificial intelligence, or is it really just you've kind of drew a relationship between two things and you're extrapolating? I don't know, right? We can debate that later. But it is, some of these things are leveraging things already in Kubernetes, like HPA and VPA and cluster autoscaler. But I think what's missing here is really a recognition that, okay, are you just putting a pretty bow on top of thresholds? That is a phase of evolution, right? You said, okay, now I got this policy does this, and this policy triggers when this. I need to kind of start putting these together. And I would challenge people that are looking at these tiles and say, are you just correlating thresholds? Because if you are, then fundamentally the problem is thresholds don't solve problems, they react to problems. So keep that in mind. I don't want to do a plug here, but I think.
Hey, listen, this is why IBM pays us the big bucks to throw those plugs in there. Feel free, plug away. Plug
Yeah.
away.
Wait a minute, who's getting the big bucks?
Oh, shoot. Mostly Rick, actually. Mostly Rick.
Mostly Rick.
Mostly Rick.
I saw
Yeah,
that
that really
gold
gets under my
filling in
skin,
that
Rick.
tooth. I saw that gold filling. Yeah. So I think that, by the way, you talk about it's the same song, just different lyrics, right? I mean, the same tune, just different lyrics. I would say when it comes to optimization, it's humorous to me as being an old hen that people are doing the same things that we all did 20 years ago and started out with thresholds and policies, and then you tried to do event correlation engines. Tivoli Enterprise Council, anyone? Tech, Micromuse, RAD, I think that's now Netcool, whatever. I mean, that was a whole genre of tools, that it was correlation of events, but they were all still fundamentally threshold-based events that weren't multidimensional. And I think looking at the evolution of this space called observability and analysis, I think we're seeing that same evolution, that people are just coming to the table with a little better mousetrap of threshold correlation. But Turbonomic started out over 12 years ago with solving the problem of thresholds don't work. You still need human beings to do a lot of interpretation. I don't care if you say AI, if you don't have good fundamental analytics that are not threshold based, then what you're doing is you're just putting lipstick on a pig, right?
On a chicken.
They have beaks though.
That's fine. But no, but that is a good point. I mean, right. And I guess that I have a question, and we didn't prep for this at all, so I'm just curious. Like the list you just shared, it looks like obviously there's two categories. There's ones that are part of the CNCF and then ones that aren't currently. How does one product get into that? How does a product or a platform get that designation to be part of CNCF?
By the way, I think the CNCF is amazing, and what I'll do is I think that there is a well documented. I mean, to be a member, there are I don't know if it's levels is the right word, but the expectation is that you are contributing to SIGs, right? That you are contributing code, you're contributing people, right? So that's all right. I'll pull up the actual definition of yeah, I wasn't ready for that either.
No,
So
no, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Also, too, again, as you said, you'll be at KubeCon, which when this comes out, I think KubeCon will be literally the week later. So I'm sure folks can find you. Will you be wearing the hat, the chicken hat? Maybe look out for the chicken hat potentially, but I'm sure.
I don't know if I can commit to that, but uh I am going to do my chicken presentation at the IBM booth
That will be awesome.
uh because I think you got to have fun with this, right? I think
Absolutely.
you got to have fun, and it's okay to say it's not perfect, because that is also the point of this ecosystem, that people can build solutions and these solutions can benefit the overall community, even if you aren't a member. And I think that was great of the CNCF to kind of share knowledge about other things out there, and it gives a user the opportunity to really explore and maybe even get motivated to go from a non-member to a member. But
Yeah, it sounds like they really foster that sense of what it means to be sort of open source and open community, which is great. I think that's something you don't really see a lot of, especially when, money gets involved and it can become difficult for that sort of
hey,
that sort of
kudos to the paradigm shift, right? I mean,
yeah, no, it's
really,
great.
really. I mean, back when I started in software, I mean, I don't, I think the only thing that was open source was Linux. And even that, I think, that was an evolution, right? To get to that. In fact, I think right now the CNCF, by membership and contributing memberships, is, I think, the largest open source community in the world, next to Wikipedia. I don't even know if it eclipsed Wikipedia, actually. But, and Wikipedia, you don't have to be a Kubernetes expert, right? I mean, there's so many. I think the reason Wikipedia could have such a larger, a designation of being the largest open source community on the planet, maybe. I should fact check myself.
Everyone can make stuff up. I don't know.
Actually, I got to give them credit. I think they do really try to police some things. So,
That's good. That's good.
but for Kubernetes, you kind of have to know what you're talking about. But as much as we give applauds and accolades, everything I just said, I'm going to contradict myself by saying all these things are just more choices. It's like now that I finally figured out how to just get my hands around having an environment that my developers can actually produce. Now you're saying it's not self-optimizing. It may be self-managing if it's a platform, if it's self-healing, but now it's not self-optimizing. And now I got to go figure out what to choose. And what to choose has to kind of, again, go back to what are the patterns that you're adopting, and are you willing to change your patterns? I think one of the things that I'm personally proud of is that, and there is a blog coming. Maybe we'll plug it on the next time. Maybe we can even get a guest speaker from our customer base. But we have customers who had aha moments leveraging our automated optimization, that they could actually change their patterns and still keep the platform, right? You don't have to give up OpenShift. I mean, you can, and go to GKE because you really want to be, all wild and woolly, and you want to, have nothing no opinions whatsoever. I want to have my own opinions. Fine, no, keep OpenShift, but you can actually change your patterns, and you can, with confidence, knowing that you got your turbo chicken wrangler to watch your back, that software can drive automation that can also help you get the confidence to shift off of these complex allocation patterns because you were just so worried about chickens running wild. And what you ended up doing was you ended up just being in a really tough state with so much complexity, and you had over provision, but you still couldn't guarantee performance. And I'm sorry, my friends, VPA, HPA, CA ain't going to get you out of that. It's not enough. It's just thresholds. And I'm sorry. And there were smart people that contributed to those communities, but they're disparate. They're not correlated even, and there's still a threshold every day. That's the bottom line.
Yeah. I mean, it's like just as the phrase suggests, self-healing implies that something had to have been broken first in order to heal, right? You don't heal things that aren't hurt or broken, right? That's the difference between that and self-optimizing. And I guess overall, it sounds like, we started this by saying the scariest story of them all, right? The thing that strikes fear into everyone's heart. And I was hoping by the end of it, we would have figured it out for everyone and ended with a happy ending. But it doesn't seem like it, but that's okay. But there is hope. There is hope.
Hope.
There's
Sure.
hope. Turbonomic. Oh, sorry. I thought we were throwing the plug in there. Okay, hold on. Wait a minute.
No, but there is hope. I think platforms, I think users have good choices in platforms today. They can come to Kubernetes with a more curated system, not just bare bones Kubernetes as a service, right? And I think that helps accelerate the adoption, but they are going to get into this chicken and egg challenge with, they've got to run applications. They've got to teach people, what it means to run. They've got to wrangle multiple applications all trying to share the same compute. And they've got to make decisions because they got to keep that pipeline moving. And the easiest decision is over allocate. And to break away from that pattern, you can't just use thresholds, because you need even more labor and intelligence. And be wary of AI products that are just really trying to correlate thresholds for you.
Yeah.
I'm sincere, because that is just going to get you into smart people learning how to manage tools to drive a result. Whereas in the same patterns that you're living in. Whereas I really want people to, if I had a dream or a wish, I think that the evolution of Kubernetes really has to be evolving from allocation to smart, intelligent, continuous trade-offs of utilization, allocation. And you can only do that if you really are willing to break some patterns, but you need the right software to be your partner to give you that confidence to break away from those patterns.
Yeah.
And it sounds like we'll have to have you on again to discuss what that potential software solution might be
Yeah,
and
we could
dive
just
deeper into exactly what that does.
My opinions of
I-
optimization. Lots of opinions now.
Hey, listen. We appreciate the opinions, and we do appreciate your time as well, Eva. I know it's not I wouldn't be incorrect to say that you are probably the most in demand, maybe busiest person at Turbo. So we do.
No.
Do. So you're saying you just ignore my slacks then? Okay, that was a trap question. All right, and now we figure you just don't want to respond to me. That's fine. It's fine. But no, we appreciate your time, and as you said, you'll be at KubeCon. So for any of folks who are watching this who are at KubeCon, Eva may or may not be wearing the hat, but either way, I'm sure you'll be able to spot her, and I'm sure she'd be happy to chat Kubernetes and Turbonomic with you as well.
And where should Kubernetes go next? I would love
Listen.
to have that conversation. I do want a world where someone says, here, I'm going to quote the Kelsey Hightower, who's just recently retired. I'm so jealous. Here's my application, just run it for me. And maybe a little teaser. Is the answer serverless?
Dun, dun,
Tune in next time.
Can I read another quote from Mr. Hightower?
Yeah.
Hit us, Greg.
The future of Kubernetes, if we're being honest, is that it has to go away. If we're still talking about Kubernetes 20 years from now, that would be a sad moment in tech because we didn't come up with any better ideas.
We need to evolve.
I love it. Rick, anything to add to that?
Well, that's spectacular, Rick. And you
Well
know what?
said.
I want to just give you a special shout out. I personally really appreciate you coming on, even though your heart wasn't in it.
Hey. Listen, happy Halloween to everyone.
Yeah, happy Halloween.
Appreciate everyone who took the time to make it to the end of this one.
Yeah,
I had a
right.
great time.
If you did make it this far, kudos. You got through all the bad puns.
You did it. You did it. But again, we always appreciate everyone who watches. As always, drop your comments in, give us some ideas, anything you'd like to see, questions you have, comments, concerns, complaints. Complaints go straight to Greg.
That's right.
Pile them on.
Got you.
But no, for more spooky stories and all things Turbonomic, make sure to check out our IBM community page.
Yep.
And Eva, again, thank you so much. Really do appreciate the time.
Yeah, it's great.
And,
Thanks for that.
yeah, have a safe and fun Halloween, everybody, and we'll see you on the next one.